Hello and welcome to Shikra Academy's daily news analysis for 22nd May 2025. So today we will be discussing five topics from the Hindu and the Indian Express. Let's begin with the topic first. Development in urban biodiversity. So this article was published in the Hindu on International Day for Biological Diversity, which is celebrated on 22nd May every year. Theme for this year is harmony with nature and sustainable development. This particular article, development without savaging of urban biodiversity, this article presents a compelling case for integrating biodiversity conservation into urban development strategies, highlighting the critical balance needed between growth and environmental preservation. Emphasis It emphasizes the urgency of sustainable urban planning in light of increasing biodiversity loss. So, in this article, we'll discuss the importance of urban biodiversity. The biodiversity forms a fundamental pillar for human well being, ecosystem health, and economic prosperity. Human well being, ecosystem health, and economic prosperity. Biodiversity crisis, that is, approximately 25% of the species on Earth currently face the threat of extinction. This gives rise to a biodiversity crisis. This crisis has profound implications on urban environments where the competition between development and conservation is most acute. Urban biodiversity enhances the aesthetic appeal of cities and also delivers critical ecosystem services, including air purification, temperature regulation, water management, mental health benefits for residents. Now we'll discuss the global framework for biodiversity conservation. The Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework represents a significant global commitment to halt and reverse the biodiversity loss. This is under Convention on Biodiversity. The framework aims to develop comprehensive policies for preserving global biodiversity, with a particular emphasis on enhancing green public spaces in cities. The cornerstone for this framework is the 30 by 30 target. This commits to effective conservation and management of at least 30% of the world's land, inland waterways, and coastal areas, or all the natural areas and oceans by 2030. Forest cover in urban areas. The Forest Survey of India has estimated the average forest cover in urban areas to be only 9.25% of the total geographical area. Key metropolitan regions show varying levels of urban cover. For example, Mumbai has the highest 25.43%, New Delhi at 12.62%, Bengaluru at 6.46%, and Hyderabad at 2.75%. These figures, they highlight the significant disparity in urban green cover across major Indian cities and underscore the need for targeted interventions. UN Habitat's 3300 rule by the UN Habitat, it is a blueprint for urban green spaces. This guideline, this 33300 guideline provides specific benchmark for cities ensured equitable access to nature for all the residents. So according to these guidelines contain that every person should be able to see at least three trees from their dwelling. Three trees should be nearby in the eyesight of the person. Neighborhoods should have a minimum of 30% tree canopy cover, and residents should have access to public green space, high quality public green space within 300-meter walk of their home. This simple yet powerful guideline by the UN Habitat emphasizes the importance of equity in urban forestry, ensuring that all residents benefit from urban trees and forests regardless of socio-economic status or neighborhood location. The next concept is City Biodiversity Index. This is also known as Singapore Index. It was developed in the year 2008. It is for measuring urban conservation efforts. It is a tool quantitatively assessing the biodiversity health of urban areas. The CBI, City Biodiversity Index, consolidates biodiversity related indicators to help cities evaluate and benchmark their conservation efforts. It has 23 indicators. There is no need to remember these 23 indicators. It is not possible, and UPSC will not ask these things. But these indicators measure three major things: native biodiversity in the city, ecosystem services that are provided by the biodiversity in the city, and governance and management of biodiversity in cities. Each of these 23 indicators receives a score between 0 to 4 with a maximum overall score of 92. This systematic approach enables city managers to make data-driven decisions regarding biodiversity conservation and helps prioritize actions and budget allocations. Now, what are the benefits of these urban green spaces? The majority of the benefits can be divided as health benefits, or we can categorize it into economic benefits. It can also have the environmental benefits as well. Discussing the health benefits first, the three lines moderate urban heat island effects. Urban heat island effect, UHI. These moderate this urban heat island effects. It reduce air pollution and help in flood control. The green belts that are in cities can lower temperatures by 3 to 5 degrees and increase relative humidity by 5%. They can decrease the temperature by 3 to 5 degrees and can increase the relative humidity by 5% compared to concrete surroundings. These microclimate improvements directly contribute to physical well-being by reducing heat stress and improving air quality. Green spaces provide venues of physical and spiritual activities by improving the mental health of the residents. All these effects, they improve the health of the residents, and the green spaces also provide the venues for physical and spiritual activities, parks and all, which contribute to better mental health of the residents. Economic benefits. arise from multiple ecosystem services. These arise due to ecosystem services that are provided by these green covers, including air purification, storm weather management, carbon sequestration, energy savings from temperature regulation, and aesthetics enhancement that increase the value of real estate. By quantifying these benefits into monetary terms, urban planners and policymakers can better appreciate the economic rationale for investing in biodiversity conservation alongside development initiatives. Urban conservation, what are the challenges and strategies? Green infrastructure development and role of city managers. Let's discuss them. The green infrastructure development. Solution lies not in choosing between development and conservation, but in finding approaches that balance both development and conservation. We need to find a balance between development and conservation. This urban conservation approach involves protecting the water, the blue water, and green vegetation networks throughout the urban landscape and thereby enhancing biodiversity, ecological connectivity, and human health. The conservation must be treated as a mainstream consideration rather than an afterthought or add-ons by the city managers and planners. The managers and city planners, they need to treat conservation as mainstream rather than as an afterthought or as add-on to development. City managers need to take stringent action against those who destroy greenery and pollute water bodies. Actions against defaulters. So let's conclude. The integration of biodiversity considerations into urban planning and development represents not merely an environmental imperative but foundation for sustainable human welfare. The city managers and the city planners must make biodiversity conservation a mass movement in cities. By making biodiversity conservation a mass movement rather than a governmental responsibility or the state responsibility, cities can create long lasting improvements in urban ecological health while continuing to develop economically and socially. There is a need to balance ecology and economy. Moving on to the next topic. The next article is taken from the Hindu editorial page. It discusses overfishing, the threat to ocean wealth and livelihoods. This article is about the critical issue of overfishing in India. It highlights how unsustainable fishing practices threaten marine biodiversity and coastal livelihoods and food security. At present, India stands at a crossroads where immediate action is necessary to prevent further depletion of marine resources while ensuring that sustainable livelihoods for millions that are dependent on fisheries. Let's discuss the state of fisheries in India, the state of Indian fisheries. Production capacity and distribution. Indian marine fishery sector has reached a plateau. It has stagnated and approximately 3 to 4 million tons of annual capture. This indicates that India has reached maximum potential yield under the current practices and technology. Despite this substantial output, there exists a significant disparity in distribution of fishing capacity and catch. 3 to 4 million tons. That's the catch in India. Small scale fishers who constitute about 90%. Small fishers, they are about 90% of India's fishing population, account for only 10% of the total catch volume. They get only 10% of the catch volume. The remaining harvest is dominated by the mechanized fishing operators, creating an imbalance in resource access and economic benefits. The distribution is highly skewed and uneven. Socio-economic conditions of the fishing communities. Many of India's fisher families live below the poverty line. Most of them are poor. The fisher families in India are poor. They struggle to sustain themselves despite being part of a productive industry. Attempts to increase catch using their larger nets and bigger engines often fail to yield more fish or significantly increased volume. Instead, these practices typically result in higher fuel consumption and operation costs, further straining the already struggling fishing communities. Now, the major issue of bycatches. Bycatch is the extra catch or the non-desired catch that gets caught by the net. So bycatch primarily consists of very small juvenile fishes, non-target species, with more dead than alive specimen being tossed back into the sea. So suppose a larger fisherman, he collects shrimps. For him, the prized possession is shrimps. But along with 1 kg of shrimp, 10 kg of bycatch gets caught into this particular net. And this bycatch is thrown back into the ocean, but most of the time the fishes in this bycatch, they die, they are of no use in the ocean. Such wasteful practices not only represent a lost economic value but significantly impact the marine ecosystems and biodiversity. What are the ecological consequences of overfishing? Impact on marine biodiversity. India's multi-species, multi-gear fisheries make bycatch management particularly challenging. Multi-species, and we have multi-gear fisheries. Indiscriminate trawling damages marine biodiversity by depleting reefs and oceanic communities, undermining food webs and eroding the foundations for future catches. Depletion of commercially important species. Ecological consequences are ecological consequences are stark, especially regarding juvenile fishing facilitated by smaller mesh sizes. So in our nets, we have relatively smaller mesh size. In these smaller mesh sizes, juvenile or small fishes also get trapped. So these practices enable under legal fish to enter the nets, depleting the spawning stock. So these juvenile stocks will in future become our main stock, mature fishes, large fishes. So this they deplete the spawning stock biomass and driving long-term decline in commercially important species that such as sardines and mackerels. Such declines may take years or decades to recover from, and sometimes they do not recover at all. So now we discuss the regulatory challenges in Indian fisheries. Fragmented governance structure. India's regulatory framework for fisheries is complicated and fragmented. Complicated plus fragmented structure of fisheries governance. All the coastal states in India and the union territories have their own marine fisheries regulation. All the states have their own marine fisheries regulation. This creates a patchwork of rules that unscrupulous fishermen can circumvent by landing their catch across the state borders. This the fragmentation of policy, undermines conservation efforts and enables the laundering of the undersized fish. After the governance issue, we have the enforcement issues. So without integration of scientifically established catch limits, uniform minimum legal size requirements, and fishing gear restrictions. So we do not have an integrated established catch limit or uniform minimum legal size requirement and fishing gear restrictions and closed seasons across the states. India continues to face MFRA enforcement challenges. These MFRAs of different states, they have enforcement challenges. The resulting consequence is the ongoing marine biodiversity depletion that threatens both ecosystem health and fishing livelihoods. Now let's discuss the solutions. We have discussed the challenges, we have discussed the limitations of policy, fragmented policy, and the enforcement issues. Now let's discuss the solutions to address overfishing in India. We have to learn from the international best practices. We take the example of New Zealand. In New Zealand they have a quota management system. They have a quota management system, QMS. It was implemented in 1986. This system has shown excellent results by aligning science and policy. The QMS establishes total allowable catches calibrated against a robust stock assessment, which have stabilized and in some cases rebuilt the key fishery stocks. This system provides clear, credible quotas for commercial, recreational, and customary fishers alike. Adapting this quota management for India, adapting the QMS, the quota management system for India's large mechanized trawler fleet, at least on a pilot basis, could curb the depletion of marine biodiversity. It can have tremendous benefits for Indian fisheries, this QMS approach. This approach prioritizes fishing allowances based on stock health rather than the economic or fuel use considerations. Stock health should be the priority. We have success stories from within India, and we take the example of Kerala. Kerala government they enforced a minimum legal size for threadfin bream fish. And after this minimum legal size, the catches they rose by 40% of threadfin bream catches. They improved by 40% within a single season. And catching threshold, a minimum legal size of the fish, it also allowed the fish to mature. It allowed the juvenile fishes to mature, producing greater yields over time and better income for the fishermen. Along with these, we need to reform the fish meal and the fish oil industry, the FMFO industry. Not only the raw fishes, but the processing. It adds value to the fisherman. So way forward for the Indian fisheries, a sustainable fisheries, what should be the way forward? Multi multi-level government reforms. Achieving the necessary reforms requires action at multiple levels. National level, both at national level and state level. At the national level, the union government needs to optimize vessel licenses, infrastructure grants, and fishery subsidies towards an ecosystem-based regulatory approach. Ecosystem-based regulatory approach. The central government should encourage such ecosystem-based regulatory approach. States, on the other hand, need to bolster the enforcement. They should focus on enforcement with quick controls and real-time reporting tools. Community engagement and consumer responsibility. The fishermen cooperatives, we can have the fishermen cooperatives. We can make use of these. Fisher cooperatives and village councils should be empowered as co-managers of the local marine protected areas and breeding sanctuaries. Urban and rural consumers must wield their buying powers by choosing only legally sized, sustainably sourced seafood and refusing offerings that undermine the marine biodiversity. Cooperatives, along with the consumer awareness or the consumer's responsibility, can be a game changer. In conclusion, continued overexploitation within will deepen the poverty among the fishermen, they erode marine biodiversity and forfeit sustainable yields for worth millions of dollars. It will lead to losses worth of millions to billions of dollars. Addressing overfishing requires immediate coordinated action across government, industry, and communities to ensure that India's marine resources remain viable and productive for decades to come. Moving on to the next article. Should water be used as a weapon? It is in news because of the suspension of Indus Waters Treaty by India and the ongoing Indo-Pak conflict. This ongoing water dispute between India and Pakistan. It represents one of the most consequential examples of how water resources can become entangled with the broader geopolitical tensions. As of 2025, as of this year, the historic Indus Water Treaty that had managed shared water resources between the two nuclear armed neighbors for over 6 decades has been suspended. It raises urgent questions about the weaponization of water resources and its humanitarian impact and implications. Let's discuss the historical framework of the Indus Water Treaty. Where is the origin and the structure of this treaty? The Indus Water Treaty was signed in 1960. The year is really important. Between the Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru and Pakistani President Ayub Khan, with the World Bank serving as the mediator and facilitator. So this deal was enabled by the World Bank. This landmark agreement was designed to equitably distribute the waters of Indus River system between the two nations following their partitions in 1947. Treaty significance cannot be overstated. It is one of the most significant treaties as it has survived multiple wars in periods of extreme tensions like the 1965 war, 1971 war, the 1999 Kargil conflict, becoming recognized as one of the most successful transboundary water sharing arrangements globally despite the ongoing regional conflicts. So, the water allocation provisions of this treaty, the treaty established the clear geographical division of the six major rivers of the Indian Indus Basin. India received the exclusive rights to three eastern rivers, that is, Beas, Ravi, and Satluj, while Pakistan was granted control over the three western rivers, Indus, Chenab, and Jhelum. So these are the six rivers that are part of the treaty. Three rivers, the eastern rivers, Satluj, Beas, and Ravi. These eastern rivers were allotted to India, and the western rivers, Chenab, Jhelum, and the Indus itself, was Pakistan was granted control of these three rivers. India can use the water of these three rivers of Chenab, Jhelum, and Indus, but cannot restrict flow according to the treaty. And this particular allocation provided India with approximately 30% of the total water volume, while Pakistan received the 70% of the water volume of the Indus Basin. However, the agreement allowed India limited irrigation use and unlimited non-consumptive uses of the western rivers for activities such as power generation, navigation, and fish culture. Transition and financial arrangements under the treaty. The original agreement in 1960 included a 10-year transition period during which India would continue supplying water to Pakistani canals, while Pakistan developed the necessary infrastructure to utilize its allotted rivers. Additionally, India contributed to 62 million 60,000 pounds, that was equivalent to 125 metric tons of gold under the then prevailing gold standard towards Pakistan construction to new headworks and canal system. India paid Pakistan to in order to Pakistan to construct its new headworks and canal systems. Notably, even during the 1965 war, the treaty has the transition period. Transition period was ongoing. India maintained these water supplies and financial commitments, demonstrating the treaty's resilience. The recent crisis has led to the suspension of this Indus Water Treaty. Pahalgam attack on tourists on 22 April 2025 and India's response. India held Pakistan responsible for the attack, which killed 26 civilians. And India responded with several punitive measures. The most striking of which was India's Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri announced the suspension of the Indus Waters Treaty with the immediate effect on 28 April 2025. The treaty was suspended by India. Formal justification in the broader context of the suspension. India's Water Resources Ministry cited that both sustained cross-border terrorism by Pakistan, terrorism, and Pakistan's unwillingness to renegotiate the treaty. The treaty's terms are key justifications for its suspension. India is looking for a very long time to renegotiate this particular treaty with Pakistan, and Pakistan has been denying such renegotiations. This represents a significant shift in India's approach to the water sharing agreement. Now, immediate consequences for agriculture of suspension for agriculture. The treaty suspension threatens immediate adverse effect on Pakistani agriculture, potentially disrupting downstream irrigation water supplies critical to Pakistani farmers. This impact would be particularly severe given the timing and Pakistan's heavy reliance on the Indus system for its agriculture production. Agriculture production forms the backbone of Pakistani economy. It's a direct attack on Pakistani agriculture based economy. Prior to the Pahalgam attack, there were ongoing hydropower disputes related to the Indus Waters Treaty. Prior to the treaty suspension, significant tensions has already emerged regarding India's hydropower development on rivers flowing into Pakistan, particularly the Kishan Ganga and Ratle projects. Pakistan had raised objections to India's 330 megawatt Kishan Ganga project, 330 megawatt Kishan Ganga project on the Kishan Ganga River or the Neelam River, which is a tributary of Jhelum River, and the 850 megawatt Ratle hydropower project on the Chenab River. Both the Chenab River and Jhelum River were allotted to Pakistan under the Indus Water Treaty. So in 2015, for dispute resolution, Pakistan initially requested the appointment of a neutral expert to address its concern. Changed the course in 2016. In 2015, Pakistan asked for a neutral expert as per the provisions of the treaty. But soon in 2016, it changed its stance and called for a court of arbitration. Under the treaty's provisions and refused to participate in the proceedings at the Permanent Court of Arbitration, arguing that both processes could not operate simultaneously. Now, in 2025, in January of this year, The neutral expert ruled in India's favored position. The neutral expert gave a judgment, gave a suggestion siding with India. It ruled in favor of India's position regarding its competence to decide on these disputes. This ruling was considered a significant victory for India as it held its interpretation of the proper dispute resolution mechanism under the treaty. The expert was expected to proceed to merits assessment phase before the treaty suspension, and this has complicated the matters further. So, the expert was about to move forward, but in the meantime, the treaty got suspended, implicating the matters. Now, what are the legal and ethical dimensions of weaponization of water? Treaty is being suspended. So now we will be discussing the legal and ethical dimensions associated with it. International humanitarian law provisions. The Berlin Rules on water resources, adopted by the International Law Association in 2004. 2004 Berlin Rules explicitly address the water in armed conflicts. Article 50, the Berlin Rules, states that the combatants shall not poison or render otherwise unfit for human consumption water indispensable for the health and survival of the civilian population. This prohibition against poisoning the drinking water is considered customary international law, binding on all states regardless of the treaty obligations. So the Berlin Rules, they do not allow poisoning of water resources in the time of conflict or otherwise. And these are a part of international law and are binding and are mandatorily binding on all the states, regardless of their treaty obligations. Prohibitions on water infrastructure attacks. International humanitarian law further prohibits the combating parties from destroying or diverting waters or destroying water installations for military purposes. If such action cause disproportionate suffering to the civilians. Even more stringently, tax on water installations which are indispensable for the health and survival of the civilian population are prohibited if they may leave civilians with inadequate water, causing death or forced displacement. But there are certain limited exceptions to this case. The legal framework does not recognize the limited exceptions. There are no limited exceptions provided under the international law. The legal framework does recognize limited exceptions. The exceptions, they are allowed but are very narrow and limited exceptions allowed, but they are still subject to broader principles of disproportionately and civilian protection against the international humanitarian law. Strategic and human implications. What are the implications of India suspending the Indus Water Treaty or the weaponization of water? The current situation, water as a strategic asset, current situation demonstrates how water resources can be transformed from shared natural assets into strategic leverage points during conflicts. The treaty's suspension represents a significant escalation that introduces water security as a direct component of the broader security tensions between the nuclear armed neighbors India and Pakistan. It also leads to civilian vulnerability. Any weaponization of water resources would disproportionately the civilian populations, particularly the agricultural communities that are dependent on irrigation. Potential humanitarian consequences extend beyond the immediate water access to food security. It also threatens food security, water security, and economic stability, leading to potential displacements of the affected populations. The regional, in case of India and Pakistan, there are also regional security dynamics. In the water disputes now appears firmly entangled with the larger security issues, including terrorism allegations and territorial disputes over Kashmir. This entanglement risk of water with conflict had been relatively successful. It has been a relatively successful domain of cooperation into another flashpoint for conflict, leading to complicating efforts at diplomatic resolution. It can have security implications. The Pakistani establishment has declared the suspension of Indus Water Treaty as an act of war, further complicating the diplomatic resolution that might arise in the near future. In conclusion, the situation raises fundamental questions about whether water should ever be used as a strategic weapon. Given the profound humanitarian implications and the prohibitions in international humanitarian law, as both nations, India and Pakistan, navigate this delicate situation, the path they choose will have significant implications not only for their bilateral relations, but also for the global norms regarding the management and protection of shared water resources during the period of international tension or conflicts. Moving on to the next topic of discussion, it is for this topic, ancient Indian mariner, warrior, queen, and love story, what gives INSV Kaundinya its name. This particular topic is based on INSV Kaundinya. It is important from Prelims point of view. It has been covered in both the newspapers, Indian Express and the Hindu. The development is that Indian Navy has formally inducted and named a sail ship INSV Kaundinya at a ceremony event held at Naval Base in Karwar, Karnataka. INSV Kaundinya is a recreation of the 5th century vessel depicted in the paintings of the Ajanta caves. Ajanta paintings. So now let's discuss the legend of Kaundinya. There is a 2000-year-old tale of an Indian merchant, Kaundinya, who sailed to the Mekong Delta, the river Mekong Delta, in southern Vietnam. He survived a pirate attack and beached his ship for repairs and encountered the warrior Queen Soma of the region. The Queen Soma proposed marriage after falling in love with Kaundinya, leading to the establishment of the Siunan kingdom, that is present day, modern day Cambodia and Vietnam. Kaundinya is recognized as the first named Indian mariner to sail to Southeast Asia. This reflects India's historical maritime prowess and cultural diplomacy. It focuses on India's maritime prowess and cultural diplomacy. It gave a cultural link, provided a cultural link between India and Southeast Asia. Kaundinya symbolizes in early Indian maritime influence and cross cultural exchanges in Southeast Asia. And till this day, India has a very good diplomatic relations, a very good, very friendly relations with the countries of Southeast Asia. Now let's discuss the ship, INSV Kaundinya. It is modeled after the 5th century ship that was depicted in Ajanta caves paintings, the 5th century AD, and is built using the traditional techniques, unlike the present day warships or present day ships. It has used the coconut fiber stitching to connect the two panels. The wooden joinery, it has wooden joinery, natural resins, and cotton sails. It has the traditional cotton sails to propel for propelling the ship. It is constructed by Kerala-based artisans and traditional shipwrights. Please note that it has not been constructed by any of the larger shipyards that are present in India. It is developed by the artisans, the Kerala-based artisans. And it is classified as a stitch ship because no nails are used to join the two panels of the ship. It was commissioned on May 21 at the naval base in Karwad, Karnataka, and has a 15-member crew from the Indian Navy. Now, what are the strategic and cultural implications of having this ship? Reviving maritime traditions. The ship INSV INSV Kaundinya demonstrate it highlights India's indigenous shipbuilding techniques and preservation of craftsmanship. It strengthens cultural ties with Southeast Asia through shared historical narratives. For future, there's a planned historic voyage to Oman. It is planned in late 2025 to retrace the ancient Indian Ocean trade routes and to demonstrate India's commitment to reviving historical maritime connectivity. Moving on to the final topic of the day, lion count grows by 32% in 5 years and lions expands beyond protected areas. According to a report from Gujarat Forest Department, not of Ministry of Environment and Forest, India's lion population, which is exclusively concentrated in Gujarat, has risen by 32% between 2020 and 2025. The report has reported 891 lions. There has been an overall increase in the lion population. 32% growth in lion population between 2020 and 25, rising to 891 individuals presently. The adult female population, which is key to future growth of the population, is increased by 27% to 330 individuals. This population growth aligns with the long-term conservation success in Gujarat, which is the home. Gujarat is the only home to in Asia's last wild lions. The Let's discuss the habitat of the lion in Gujarat. So there are core habitat or the protected areas, and we had the beyond protected areas. In the core habitat, 394 lions concentrated in the Gir National Park and Pania Wildlife Sanctuary. And Pania Wildlife Sanctuary. The lions, they have expanded beyond the protected areas. Majority of lions now reside outside the core protected areas, occupying the 35,000 square kilometer of area by 2025. 36.4% territorial expansion is seen between 2015 and 2020, followed by 16.67% growth between 2020 and 2025. Area growth. What are the conservation challenges faced regarding lions, Asiatic lions? There is a challenge of human wildlife conflict. Increasing proximity, the increasing population of lions is increasing the proximity to human settlements and it raises risk of livestock predation and retaliatory actions. Back to livestock. So the lions, what they do because of the lack of habitat or their habitat being small, they come to the nearby village areas and they attack the livestock. The government provides compensation mechanisms to the affected villagers. The affected communities, they receive compensation for livestock losses. So it fosters tolerance of the communities towards the lion population. So what are the way forward? Habitat capacity. Gujarat theoretical capacity is of 2000 lions. This is contingent on its prey availability and it has. So now there's a need for new regions. Advocates, the experts, they advocate for creating additional habitats within or outside Gujarat to ensure genetic diversity and reduce density driven conflicts. Moving the lions, the translocation of lions from the Gir National Park or the nearby areas to another region in Gujarat or in some other state is vital to ensure the genetic diversity. So suppose the lions are concentrated in a particular area and the entire population gets affected by a pathogen, be it a virus or a bacteria, then it puts the entire population within that restricted area in danger. Originally, the Kuno National Park was originally earmarked for lions, but currently they host the translocated cheetahs from Africa. This highlights missed opportunities for the interstate collaboration. Gujarat government is reluctant in sharing or in giving away their prized possessions of the Asiatic lions, and this highlights a missed opportunities between the interstate collaboration. Madhya Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, in Kuno National Park and the other protected areas in Madhya Pradesh, the conditions, the weather conditions and the habitat conditions are similar to that of the Gir forest. So that's all for today's quick discussions. So now it's my pleasure to announce before you that we are launching, the Shikra Academy is launching complete PCM batch for TSPSC Group 1. It has a 1 year duration. It is an all-inclusive batch. You can get it for a discounted price of rupees 40,000. For admissions and for free demo classes, you can call the number. Similarly, we have launched an all-inclusive foundation batch for TSPSC Group 2. It is also a 1 year program and with the early discounted offer of rupees 20,000. Thank you.